But one day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a very influential and powerful voice speaking out against racial segregation in the 1960s. His actions caused a major uproar in an ongoing civil rights movement for African Americans at that time. He was born on the 15th of January 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. As a child, Martin Luther King Jr. faced lots of racism, and I believe that this is part of what drove him to lead the civil rights movement. Martin King Jr. started playing football at a young age, and it was one of his favorite activities to do. Even though he had siblings and friends to play with, he wasn't always happy as a child. In fact, in 1941, when his grandmother died of a heart attack, the 12-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. tried to commit suicide. At the age of 15, Martin Luther King Jr. spent his summer working at a tobacco farm in Connecticut. When he saw what life was like unsegregated, he knew that he had to do something about segregation in the South. Martin King attended the Morehouse College until his graduation in 1948. He then attended the Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania for 3 years. While he was there, he learned about Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolence philosophy. From there, King attended Boston University, and while he was in Boston, he met Coretta Scott. Martin and Coretta later married and had 4 children together. During this time, Martin King had also become a pastor at a Baptist church in Montgomery, Alabama. Also during this time in history, city buses were segregated so that white people sat in the front and African Americans either sat in the back or were forced to stand to give their seat to a white person. However, Martin Luther King did not approve of this. He and a group of people from local churches decided to boycott buses as they were against segregation. This event, which later became known as the Montgomery Bus Boycott, was inspired by a woman named Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat to a white person. After that, King organized a group called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. With this group, King traveled the country to discuss race-related issues with religious and civil rights leaders. A little over a year later, King and 33 other people were arrested while protesting segregation in a lunch counter in an Atlanta department store. The charges were dropped, but King was sentenced to prison on the account that he had supposedly violated his probation because he had committed a minor traffic offense several months earlier. He was later released because John F. Kennedy, who was a presidential candidate at the time, intervened and spoke out publicly. Over the next couple years, King continues to participate in boycotts and giving speeches, as well as getting arrested a couple more times. On August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. gave his most famous speech, called the I Have a Dream speech, in front of 200,000 people at the Lincoln Memorial. After this, he continues to lead marches and peaceful protests against segregation. But as they say, all good things must come to an end. On April 4th, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, King was standing on the second-story balcony of the Lorraine Motel when he was shot and killed by a sniper's bullet. Even though he's gone, Martin Luther King's legacy and actions will never be forgotten. To this day, there are memorials across America that stand for him. Martin Luther King Jr. was and is a true hero.